Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. I want to do a really fun discussion here talking about how good I really think Crossover Breakers is. I've been seeing a lot of positive feedback from the three archetypes coming in this set, and I think it stems back to like how lackluster some of the previous deck build packs have been. They've kind of fell into one of two kind of categories, I think, for the most part. That led to big problems down the line, and I think it led to problems for not only us being underwhelmed with the set, but also Konami. Like, Konami's still a business, they want to make money, and those sets came out a little lackluster, especially early on. So the two categories that most of those sets fell in were sometimes on drop, none of the three archetypes really holding a ton of potential out the gate. Just kind of all three archetypes didn't really seem all that good competitively in any way. Or you had one, and that's kind of been the most common theme the most recently, right? Vanquish Soul coming in a deck build pack with two other archetypes that really weren't great on release. And so Vanquish Soul ended up being super dummy expensive for its core, and the other two archetypes being pretty cheap. Same thing with Centurion. Out the gate, it's the only one that really had potential from the first drop. Now, some of the archetypes have gotten support since then, but that doesn't matter for the first handful of months. That set's just sitting there on the shelves because nobody's like, I'm not going to invest in a whole box of this if I only want one of the three archetypes and they have all the high rarity cards, right? So it comes down to it just being so lopsided. So Centurion, same thing as Vanquish Soul, super high, expensive core. And it makes for a super lopsided set where really only one thing is desirable for the player base, at least the competitive player base, overall. And so what I really appreciate the most is the balance here. And I was kind of skeptical at the beginning of the year because Konami showed us that they weren't doing two deck build packs this year. They skipped the first half deck build pack that they had been doing. They've been doing two a year. And that's kind of a lot. 6 whole archetypes, right? And especially when these side sets are basically nothing but those new archetypes. So if those archetypes are not desirable, that set is not desirable. And so to see them come around here, and this looks like one of maybe the most promising deck build pack out the gate, right? We saw Rescue Ace get really good support down the line. We saw Exosister get really good support down the line after starting off looking like really lackluster archetypes. But on release, those sets did really, really poorly. So I think this set has the best potential so far. I think all three archetypes have legit merit to them. I'm excited to mess with the Raizeol cards. I get it. They're simple. That seems to be people's biggest gripe with them is that they're a pretty boring deck. They just drop a bunch of rank 4s on the field and that's it. That being said, though, as somebody who came into the game in 2017, came back to the game in 2017, really for the first time in any sort of competitive sense, very end of 2017, basically as soon as Zodiac and Spiral were getting banned, right after that, the finalization of those archetypes, that's when I kind of started looking at the game more competitively. I looked at all these cool rank 4 cards, and I thought they were, like, some of them read like pretty good, but there were no engines that were good enough at just dropping enough rank 4s on the field at the time to really make any of those cards really worth it. And so I kind of had already missed the slower phase of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where like rank 4 toolbox was like a legit way to play the game that had already been passed up by Zodiac. And then after that, power creep has hit every time since then, and now it wasn't good enough. Now we finally have a deck that is basically rank 4 toolbox. The only restriction on the deck is keeping you into rank 4s from extra deck. There's a lot of cool cards you're able to take advantage of that really no deck has really been able to take advantage of on this level before. So I think it's cool. I think they have a lot of consistency. I think they have powerful enough end boards. I also think they play through interaction decently well. I think they have a lot of cool tools, and I want to mess with them. Then you get the Apodrakosis archetype. Still missing one card from this archetype, I believe. I have no idea what it's going to do because I don't even see a slot. There's not even a slot break for the cards we've seen so far to know exactly what it is. So it's either like a trap card or another monster in the main deck, but we'll have to wait and see when we get there. Interesting archetype. It's a bunch of small engines inside of a much bigger engine. There are some crazy aspects to this archetype. This one's the hardest one to put a real gauge on out the gate because it could be used as an engine in other decks. It could be maybe tried to be built a little bit more pure with other engines being a smaller side engine in its own deck. it's really hard to say exactly where it's going to end up, but like it has some powerful payoffs, right? It has the pseudo macrocosmos that the engine searches pretty consistently. It gets you a bounce. It gets you a couple of level 10 bodies on the field to make Varudras the new rank 10 that's just a negate and a pop. It really does have like some legs to it. We just have to figure out what the home is going to be. But legit competitive potential there as well. Also, I didn't even really say, Raizeol to me, I don't think it's all the way there in like high level play, but I think it's going to be a good rogue deck. I think it's going to be on the level of like what Mathmech was when it was kind of hanging around. Nobody really said it was like tier 1 for most of that time, but I think it could be one of those decks. It's consistent, fits a lot of non-engine, dodges works around hand traps pretty well, and has a lot of toolbox capabilities in the extra deck to be able to hit you with any specific counter you may hate, right? The Dwellers of the world, Steel Swarm Roach in specific matchups, right? Just random cards like those that like matchup to matchup will absolutely like crush you once they know what you're playing. So yeah, I think that deck has potential. It's hard to say with Apodrakosis cards. Like I said, just are they going to be an engine in another deck that actually is really high on the competitive tiers? Is itself as a bigger engine in a deck, like the main engine in a deck, going to be able to climb up? I don't know, but the cards seem like they're there. The cards seem like they're strong enough. The engine might be strong enough to still float around there, and I think also the fact that they do apply to multiple different strategies as a splashable engine gives even more credence to this archetype being desired by more players. That it's not just, oh, do I want to play the Apodrakosis deck? It's like, do I want to play Sword Soul with an Apodrakosis engine? Do I want to play this other deck with a small Apodrakosis engine? Dinos with Apodrakosis? Whatever it comes out to, I think it opens the door for them to be sought after by a bigger group of players. And the last one, and probably the main one, and we kind of expected this coming into this as soon as we saw that there was a waifu archetype, and it was based off of a pretty popular overall, like, not franchise, but movie / book in the history of media with Alice in Wonderland. Like, that kind of set up for for a fan favorite. And Konami knows their stuff. When they make a waifu deck that's going to be a fan favorite, like Sky Striker, they make it good, and that's what they've done here. This is basically a Cyberse Link spam deck that also plays Shifter. No real Link spam deck has ever really wanted to play Shifter before, because a lot of the Link decks are all about getting Links in grave, getting the monsters linked off and into grave, and that's what made Link so strong, is they put monsters in grave so easily. This deck is all about getting your own monsters banished, and they all come back off of that. So Shifter's insane here. Does the deck main D-Fisher, stuff like that, you know what I mean, they can play with. It's really strong. It's really scary. I think the deck has the potential to be like a bombastic combo Cyberse deck if you want. But if you do that, you probably have to play enough generic Cyberse cards where you don't want to mess with Shifter to like counteract that. Or you play it more like a mid-rangey strategy where you do play Shifter because it's just such an insane defensive card. Being able to play Shifter in a deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like the single most powerful thing for the TCG. In terms of like most other decks can't. So it's like the biggest leg up you can have in a single card, basically. But the problem is what we've seen over the last couple of years with Shifter is like the types of decks that can play Shifter have a lower ceiling, right? Kashtira Control, like they don't do that much, but because they have Shifter, it kind of gives them that extra edge. Fluandereeze, relatively lower ceiling, but they can play Shifter. Right, and so I think this deck may have the best potential we've ever seen from a Shifter deck at actually being able to like be the most competent as their own engine. Felt like weaker engines were able to work under Shifter. This may be one of, if not the strongest engine we've seen yet at still being able to work under Shifter. So I think it's got a really good chance to be a legitimate deck going forward. We'll have to see the best way people come up with playing it, because I do think there are a couple different routes and a lot of different tech choices you can kind of mess around with. But there's no denying that this deck is certainly strong out the gate. All three of them are, honestly. So when you come back to it, I think one of the cool things here is because all three archetypes are desirable in their own way, and maybe they'll lean a little bit into the Malice cards and give them one more, maybe two more ultra rares than the other two. But that was another big problem with balance, is that when one archetype was just so much more desirable than the others, Centurion, Vanquish Soul. They skewed all the high rarity cards to that archetype because they knew it was the most desirable one to make sure that the value is still being held in the set. And it made those archetypes super expensive. But even if they do lean somewhat towards Malice here, it probably will still be the most desired archetype from the pack. There's going to be real desire for the other two as well, so they can't lean all the way into it. So instead of one archetype with a $300 price tag behind it to basically get a hold of the entire core, is it more like maybe Malice is $150 and the other two are more like $100 a piece to kind of get the cores? I think that seems a little more fair and a little more balanced, rather than having two cores that are like sub $50 to get a hold of and one that's like 300, right? Try and pull them all down to a healthier mean. And honestly, if the deck build packs, if they only do one deck build pack a year, but they make it better quality like this one, I think I prefer that overall rather than two deck build pack archetypes where like only 2 out of the 6 themes overall are good out the gate, and then the other two have to wait 6 months, 9 months for legit support to finally like land on their own 2 feet. I think I'm okay with that. And it makes this set feel like it's going to have legitimate impact on the game. It feels like this could almost be, especially with like ban lists and stuff, if they like finally crucify Snake Eye, and maybe they come after the Fiendsmith stuff after a couple months, and then this set drops. Like, are we just sitting here going, huh? Wow, the whole format is just being completely flipped on its head. We got rid of the 2 craziest decks in the game, and then we added, 3 new legit competitive archetypes that are going to come in and cement their spot in the format. I think this is the way to go. I think they've done a great job so far. We're still missing a Malice and an Apodrakosis card. I don't think they matter that much, to be honest. Like they can be good and help the archetype. I just think the archetypes are already shown to be solid. So like they don't need anything crazy to finish up their stuff. But we're certainly not going to be mad if the cards are good, especially if you're a fan already of any of these archetypes already. So really, really cool. Really happy to see this. I think this has been a good direction Konami's been going in, and hopefully they keep it up. But let me know your thoughts down below, just maybe on just crossover breakers as a whole, the philosophy behind deck build packs in general, as well as what's your favorite. What are you looking forward to most from these 3 archetypes? What are you looking at, spying on, going, ooh, that's my upcoming new favorite deck? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down below. But I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, as always, guys. I will see you in the next video. Peace.